this lesson is about opalescence, specifically white opals or milk opals. Now I've always been intrigued by the effect and wanted to do it in fabric, but like luster, it requires piecing quite a few fabrics to get that kind of smooth, slightly luminous look that white opals have. So I went looking for fabrics that already looked opalescent, and I came up with many. Here are just 4. So they have milky grade color, and there are bits of brighter color, but overall it's very subdued. So you could take these fabrics, and I had students do this, and cut them up and use them to create the look of a white opal, which is kind of what I did in my vest. I have K-facet stripes in the inner triangles, and the outer triangles are batiks that are slightly milky, slightly grayed, very little color, but they have the look of an opal. They almost look like mother of pearl, I think. So I decided to, instead of using 4 different or many different fabrics to create white opals, that I would try to use one and see if I could make that work. Excuse me. And I did this fair and square block, which is a wonderful traditional block. It has different size pieces, different shapes. I'm always looking for those kinds of designs to work with. So I had this amazing batik fabric in my stash, and I thought it was great because it had some linear quality to it. It had a little graphic element in the wavy lines, and I wanted to cut the fabric so that the inner triangles would spin, just to give it a little sense of motion. I think it also gives it a little bit of a look of faceting, which of course you don't see with white opals, but I thought that made it look even more natural. And I surrounded the batik with 4 different shot cottons. Now remember, they're solids, but they have the warp and the weft threads dyed before they're woven, so they have a wonderful shimmer. On the face of it, they look like solids, but they're really more powerful than that. Then I thought that unit was interesting but not strong enough. I wanted some contrast. So I added 8 prints. These are Marcia Dursey prints, and they're mostly tone on tone or just 2 colors. If you get too much pattern, too much color, I knew that would take over in this kind of a block. And then I used 2 batiks, one with a subtle stripe and one that looks opalescent, in the corner squares, so that if you made multiple blocks and put them together, you'd have an interesting 4-patch pattern where the blocks meet. So that was interesting, and I took a photo, rotated the blocks on my computer, and created a fake quilt. And what happened was that the Marcia Dursey prints, it was quite wonderful, but they took over because they have so much. They're darker in value, they're brighter in color, and they have pattern. And I should have known, but I just had to pursue it and see for myself. And it would have been a fine quilt, but it would not have emphasized white opalescence. So I did what I tell my students to do. I auditioned and I edited. And I came up with this quilt top, which I've titled White Opals and Gelato. And I might mention that I have a black opals quilt, black opals and ribbon candy, that's very different. You can see that on my website. So here's what I did. If you'll just focus on the top 2 rows so that you can actually see me in all of this. So I ditched the prints, and I substituted instead 4 shot cottons as rectangles, and I thought it was much more successful. One of the shot cottons is a darker green, and I did that on purpose to give it sort of an asymmetrical look. And in the corners I used a very subtle woven stripe that has yellow, peach, and green, and alternated the direction of the stripes so that that would add a little bit of shimmer, and it wouldn't detract from the main emphasis of the center units. So I'm looking forward to quilting this and turning it into a quilt. I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to border it, but I'm thinking not. I love borderless quilts. So you're going to do a color study with fair and square. And what I'd like you to do is find 4 opalescent fabrics and cut them up and use them in the center area, or find 1 fabric that looks opalescent on its own and just use the one. And surround the opal unit with triangles that are a little darker, milkier, grayer. Then in the outer areas you can do as I did with rectangles, or you can break up those units with squares. And then something in the corner squares that is a little bit lighter in value and will play very much a secondary role. So I'm looking forward to seeing these because it's a really amazing effect, and I sure had a lot of fun making that quilt. So now we've come to the end of the series. I've had a great time working on these lessons, and I hope you've enjoyed watching them. I invite you again to visit my website, ChristineBarnes.com, where you can see my books, patterns, color wheels, kits, wearables. You can also there sign up for my newsletter, Christine's Color Connection. I write an article on color for each issue. So I send you forth into new territory with color. As I said in the beginning, it's more about practice than talent. I have seen so many quilters grow in their use of color, and you can grow too. Thank you for watching. You've been a great audience.